well.
Yeah.
The gang's all here?
Mhm.
Okay, let's call the Finance Committee meeting. We start, kicking it off now, and our objective today is to have an update from Greg on our financial investments and our investment policy, and to see where we stand. And if we choose to make some recommendations, we can do that. But the idea was to bring us all up to speed, I think.
Yeah.
You know, rather than trying to answer all the questions today or create solutions that we perhaps haven't prepared for. Wouldn't you agree on that? Okay, so Greg, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Do you want to approve the minutes first?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes from the meeting of October 18th be approved. Any additions or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, Greg?
I have just a quick question. Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
Meeting just started.
Just started.
No.
There was,
Well, you were talking before I walked in, that's why I was,
No, you're right on time.
okay, all right.
So, again, I think a historical perspective, right, like in terms of where we are as an organization, I think, 2022 has been, again, the most successful year I think we've almost ever had, right, on record. We went into the year with, a strong balance sheet that we've always had, and now where the cash balances are, which they're all housed at M&T, and the interest rate environment has kind of accelerated our look at what to do with generally what I would define as excess cash, right? And if you just think about the organization on a day-to-day basis in terms of our budget runs about, our expenses are about $2 million a year. We generally budget about $2 million of net revenue that we kind of break even, right? We put the money back into the programs that we support. Obviously, 21 and 22 have been really good years. 23 initially, 3 months ago when we did the budget, wasn't generally looking like it was going to be a banner year. However, that changes in one project, and that looks like that may happen again, where we may generate $4 or $5 million of both fee revenue and bond revenue on expenses of $2 million, right? So if we go into the year, and again, just at a high level, we have, let's just call it, we have $15 million of cash, okay? And our expenses, if we bring in no revenue, our expenses are $2 million, right? However, again, right now, if I sit here today, it looks like we may have, revenue in excess of expenses for 23 of maybe a couple $1 million again. So it doesn't look like we're going to be taking away from that 15 million. We're going to be adding on to that number. Now, we have allocated $5 million, rough $5.1 million to the workforce modernization plan. Okay. Now, there's nothing that says that money is restricted for any other reasons except to use it for, what we intended to use it. Doesn't mean we can't invest it, put it in CDs, low interest, whatever that may be. But putting that aside for a second, we still have $10 million basically sitting in liquid cash accounts. The interest rate environments are between 4.5% and 5%, right? They change, and now before when it was 1-2%, we would, and the numbers were we had $5 million. Those numbers maybe weren't so appetizing for our organization to kind of look at and consider. I think now where it's, we have $10 million, the rates could be 4.5%, 5%. It's something that the board, finance committee, I think we should consider what to potentially do with those excess funds. So I think the conversation today was going to be focused around, obviously questions. If we wanted to pursue an investment strategy, who was going to do it? Who was going to kind of manage that, be in charge, whatever that may be, the amount that we would consider as a finance committee that we would recommend to the board, and kind of have more of an open dialogue of, you know, where we think, we wanna have that discussion around. And, you know, again, like I said, if we, you know, if you think about, if you put the 5 million aside and say, hey, we don't wanna even consider that, we have $10 million. And if we add to $2 million of that this year, right, and we've never been in a real cash flow crunch as an organization, right, we've all been pretty healthy. You know, by the end of the year, we could have $12 million in our bank accounts, right? And does the board or the finance committee want to consider doing something with that? You know, at what amount? Do we want to hire and engage a professional? Like, this is not, you know, this is not a Bonadio thing at all. Like, I'm not a, you know, I would tell you, I'm not an expert in investing in T-bills, right? That's just not, right? So, full disclosure. And so that's kind of where we are talking about, is this something that we want to do? It is an eligible investment per our investment policy. It would be done through M&T as a custodian in Wilmington Trust, part of the M&T umbrella. We've, you know, they can do this for us. So I think the conversation and the commentary is around, is this something we want to move forward with? How do we want to do it? And if so, is there a dollar amount that we want to, you know, consider, based on just, you know, some of the things that I just discussed and
If
mentioned?
we were going to move on to step one, do we have to make any changes to our investment policy first?
I would
Or
recommend
do
that we
you-
do consider that.
Or do you think?
I will say the investment policy tracks exactly with the statute. We've taken no liberties.
Right,
It's
right,
right
right.
out of the statute.
But I mean, if we were to make some recommendations that are sort of outside that policy, we'd have to modify the policy first.
We can look at that, but we have to, I guess I would preface my answer by saying that our funds, as we all know, are highly regulated, and what we can invest in is enumerated within the law. So our flexibility is only so great. It's,
Sure.
and it's, these are the, you know, these are government investments, these are investments by government entities, and so they are very secure, collateralized investments that we'll have to make. So we're, like I said, we're pretty limited in what we can even do.
Are there cases where other IDAs have added their own language to the policies outside of the statute? Like, what is that flexibility look like?
Perhaps, but these certain policies of these boards are policies that I think most IDAs just follow the statute on without any modification. I can understand, we have other policies that would provide more flexibility, but I wouldn't put the investment deposit policy in that category.
Yeah, but if a checking account gets over, we should be able to say and put a plateau, a level of, if it hits this amount, at least move it out of checking and go into a money market. I mean, okay, so
Yeah.
we're making 1.8 instead of 4, but to have it sitting at 12 million in a checking account,
Yeah.
that's when my stomach hit my throat. That's very concerning. And that would throw a flag up in my world at a trustee meeting. That would be an automatic flag. We need to do something now. And I understand that the flow of money has its highs, its lows, but there had to be a point in time that we should have set at 5 million, leaving it liquid. What are our options? Now here we're gonna be at a potential $15 million sitting with, did you say just M&T?
Yes, all of that, yeah.
That is concerning.
Why
That is very concerning. All my eggs are in one basket.
What?
All of our eggs are in one basket. You are not diversified. You have, and we know, I'm not accusing, but we know and we read about it all the time about stuff happening. That's why we should have, and we, back to your point, Ann, I think policy needs to be addressed, excuse me, when there's a certain amount of money in a checking account,
A trigger.
a trigger.
Do we have an I'm sure M&T has an investment office officer or investment department that oversees their customers like us?
Yes.
Is
Do we
M&T
know
where we
who-
keep,
Do we know who that person is?
Yes,
And-
and that, this was put in as a point of reference. We get these every week, just so you can see, these are rates that are out there right now.
Perfect.
And they email this to us every week. They won't advise us though.
Who is the person that is
Our
head of
relationship
their-
manager is Frank Capusta.
Okay. And is he the head of the investment
No,
group at
he's
M&T?
not the investment group. He's on the,
He's on the government
Yeah.
side.
What's his name?
Frank Capusta, Kupusta.
KAP.
Kapusta.
And what's his title?
hold on, I'll get it for you.
But he's at M&T.
Senior Vice President,
Okay.
M&T Government Banking.
Okay. But we don't meet with him?
We don't what?
We don't meet with him?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, we
This is
do?
Frank,
Yeah.
right there.
Okay. Who does? How often?
We do periodically. I mean, obviously, we've had more conversations in the past year to talk about what the plan is to move forward. There's other account CDs and things that are limited because of collateral reasons, right? That 1.8% may not be 1.8% because of collateral reasons. That's why, the other alternatives are more attractive right now. But Frank, we've probably started dialogue for months, like past couple months, we've had these conversations, like, what would this look like? Trying to get, obviously, information to have this dialogue before we just kind of went into it, without, any information or
We
any.
probably had that dialogue before we created our workforce development fund as well, right? How much money we're gonna put in the fund?
I know, we have conversations with Frank, I would say, I don't know, at least twice, 3 times a year, maybe, I think sometimes it just depends on what we have going on in terms of, in the year, and obviously, this year's, and, with other organizations, our sister organization, the IDC, we've had some conversations because, not contrary to Troy's point, but like, over on that side, we have 12 different banks, and the administrative nightmare that puts on the organization for everyone to have $200,000 in a bank account is absolutely, it's just very hard to deal with. To get information out of, to do anything with, to get better rates, right? When you go to an institution and say, hey, I want to invest $2 million, you're gonna be like, okay, your rate is, 3%. If you tell them I'm gonna invest $5 million, well, the rate's gonna be a little bit more. So trying to somehow, and I'm not saying that we need to be with one bank, but like, hey, maybe, a couple here and there, going from 12 to 2 or 3 or 4 is probably, a little bit more, makes sense.
My concern with M&T Bank and my experience with M&T Bank is the administrative fees are based on the amount of money that they're administering. So what is the basis points that we're getting charged on $12 million of a checking account?
Nothing.
No
We've
administration
negotiated.
charge.
No.
So what is the administration on the savings?
Nothing.
We have no fees with M&T.
We pay no fees. And
Interesting.
they actually charge us when they reimburse us for it.
and that would be close to the same for T-bills, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
You would have a fee, but it would be probably very minimal.
minimal.
So how do we know that this 12 million in the checking account, M&T is not using for their benefit? Where is the transparency of the 12 million? As a bank's holding 12 million, I find it very hard to believe they are not investing something and making money off of this.
I think by law, they're allowed to invest they have to be collateralized as well.
Well, I
believe
would like to see that. As a financial officer on this committee, I think that's something that we should be, and something that should be shared with us. Why do we work with M&T? Obviously, we know that they're the big bank here in Rochester, but is that something that we shouldn't be looking at diversifying? And I understand the administrative of everything. I totally get that, but what is concerning is if somebody even inside M&T does something and I'm the custodian on that decision-making process, that hook is still gonna come back to me.
Like personally?
It could, As this reads, all participant, that's what this
D&O
policy
liability
reads.
insurance
I am the
on board
custodian.
members.
Yes, we maintain insurance.
Yeah. So,
And your acts here as a board member, it's no personal liability attaches.
right.
Okay. Can I also get that in writing if and when?
Get what, right?
That I'm not liable on responsibility and the insurance of anything. I don't personally think I
Distribute
have a
the
copy
language
of that.
behind the DNO, the
Yeah,
liability
we'll share our
insurance.
insurance.
Just update
Thank you.
people on that, yeah. I
think
think these are
it's-
all good discussions and good questions, and
I think it's too big of amount of money to not get a financial consultant or consultants to give us a presentation, knowing that we have our parameters where we need liquid when we need it. We don't wanna lose money, absolutely never, ever wanna entertain losing the money. But if there is something, I like the fact that we could get somebody to take custodianship off of the committee. Granted, we're here to oversee, but we would also, I would like to have a custodian take that burden off of the board members.
Well,
That's my concern, is
The policy talks about a custodial agreement when we do invest, and we will have a custodial agreement, of course, with the financial
the lender,
institution.
yeah.
Mhm.
And we've got, language in the policy that says deposits shall not exceed 15 million to any
Right.
financial institution.
Because we did, if you recall, last year's finance committee meetings, I don't know if it was in October, but based on feedback from the auditors, it was, we were very transparent about the amounts being held in accounts, and we had a lower number in our investment policy that we were going to violate. We knew we were going to violate once we got fees. So we did talk about the large balance, and now we're back to talk about what do we do? Do we get a consultant? I think probably we do based on feedback, but this is all getting to that point that we started earlier when we revised this investment policy.
When was the investment policy revised?
Last March.
Last March.
March.
So it might be a good idea to have this, person, Frank Capusta from M&T, who's our senior advisor with M&T on our investments,
Mhm.
have him meet with the committee,
Yeah.
you know, and then we could ask him questions.
So I think to clarify, his role is more of as our relationship manager with the bank. He's not anything to do with the investment side of things, and would not. He's
Well, we
basically
could-
said he will not. He cannot.
He cannot advise us.
But he can refer us as our relationship manager to someone.
At M&T,
At
right.
M&T who can work with us.
Yes.
I don't,
wouldn't
again,
feel
I don't know because M&T's the custodian, right? Like, so, I don't, and again, I'm not for sure, like, whether someone inside M&T could advise us as a consultant, like Troy was indicating. I'm not sure they can do that, because if they could have done that, I'm assuming Frank would have said, I don't know, I hate to make assumptions, like, Greg, I can't do that, because we've asked him, hey, can you, like, if this was an option where we wanted someone who does this, right, like, can you do that? He basically said he couldn't.
Okay.
You would have thought he would have said,
Which
I
is the same.
personally can't, but there's someone in our organization that could do that. I mean, he made it seem like you don't need that, but listen, I'm not in,
Okay.
Every bank has an investment group.
they
And
do,
have
I just don't know
senior
if they
officers
can.
in that group.
I just don't know if they can advise us
If
the
we're
way I
not-
think.
yeah.
But
if
they
the-
could advise us on investments that we might want to consider.
I don't know if they can do
Is that a
that.
service for which COMIDA would need to RFP?
I think we should, based
Yes.
on the conversation,
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
should issue an RFP for a financial advisor.
Yeah.
I think that it's good to take a look, we bank with M&T, but let's get another opinion, and let's do an RFP for a financial advisor.
Sure.
And we can have that in line in a couple months.
Okay.
And to Troy's point about like M&T and the collateralization, you mentioned that we do get
We do get the
M&T's
collateralization.
collateral statements, so we have information,
No, we give them, share them with the auditor.
There's of course a certain amount of trust that we provide to M&T, cause it's M&T,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So if we take the time to do our due diligence in the interim, because of the interest rates being where they are, could we put money into T-bills or 3-month ladder CDs? So we're not, because we're talking about a lot of money, there's a lot of interest that we could be earning, even if it's, even if it's a 3-month CD, give us time to.
That's at the community, or committee's discretion, you have the authority
is
to buy,
It's, it's someone rolling something on the,
Oh, yeah, it's not a,
the
it's not a.
jagged floor.
Dive.
Can I ask,
yeah.
can you recap what amendments were approved and adopted last March? Because I see that
Page 2.
the last time it was in 2008, and I was out on maternity
Pick
leave
her
last
up.
March. So
The amount went up.
can you recap what that specifically, what those amendments were?
Page 2, number 7.
Not to
The
exceed
deposit shall
50.
not exceed,
Okay.
I believe that it was a lower dollar amount, and we.
I don't think there was a dollar amount.
Or maybe there wasn't even a dollar amount.
The auditors recommended
Yeah, I
that we.
see,
amended
I
it
see
on
that, yes.
March.
Maybe it
So
was NCIC,
$15
I'm
million.
thinking of.
And at that point in time, I don't believe that we had anticipated that we would be in excess of $15 million within
Correct.
the
Right.
course of the year, right?
And the rates were just
right.
about to start going up
Right.
No.
at that time.
Right,
And we
So
hadn't
that's
received
why-
the license
so-
fee, the key.
right.
Because of the significant project activity and having had a record year, that's what triggered
Yeah.
us scheduling this meeting here today to engage the finance.
But it also was triggering, how do we spend these funds? And that's what led to the Workforce Development Fund. Let's put our money back into the community, which is a separate issue from how much is your money earning. But you have this excess
Right.
money. It's created by our revenue growth by our own customers, if you will. How do we spend it? What does that earn? How do we reinvest it? So,
I don't think we need to knee-jerk right now on a 3-month action and readdress this again in 3 months. I think it'd be best to go to an RFP.
Yep.
And within 2 months, we can make a decision on a larger amount of money and a better thought process, just to have everything, our options. I would be a lot more comfortable with that, a lot more comfortable.
Most of the money is in a checking account?
Can we just move it?
no,
It
it's spread out over CDs and savings accounts
So while
and
this-
checking.
So while we're going
Checking
through,
is the biggest bucket at
So-
this point.
which is
Check.
Checking.
checking?
So it's not earning,
So are you okay if we move some
If
of
we
that
just move
checking
the-
into one of
To
these
a mo-
savings accounts?
Just for now?
Or the money market accounts are paying over 4%.
Right.
I don't know about it
Not-
at M&T, I'm assuming it's.
Not in ours, because ours, there's a collateral thing for governments, that's why it's a little bit different, what we're talking about in traditional businesses, where that's limited. But again, I think maybe the conversation is, we don't move forward with the T-bills thing, in a knee-jerk reaction, as Troy
Yeah.
put it,
No,
but
we could
we
move money
we
into
should
savings
consider
accounts that earn more.
savings or CDs or money markets in the interim.
Why not? Why not?
Does that make
We
sense
have
for
it
everybody?
now, So why not just move it?
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking about almost $500,000 a year of interest
Mhm.
at current rates on 10 million.
So the minimum, Greg, minimum investment would be 3 months.
On a T-bill, we could do that, we could take some money or whatever was decided, there's 3, 6, 9, 12, right? And again, the latter process is doing each and, right, limits liability and exposure and interest rate volatility. But if you said, Troy, that would just give us a little bit of breathing room to like, hey, because if we do something with a 3-month, we could do that. And a maybe a lower dollar amount initially than we maybe have recommended. Or you say, well, let's not do anything, can we do the RFP process?
So,
I mean, again, let's talk, maybe, can we talk about, like, is that,
We can start the RFP process in April. You guys, you just give us a little bit of time to get this parish report done, which is really making me lose sleep. So if you could give us till April to get an RFP written, we'll have to, we've never done anything like that, so we'll have to kind of lean on you to kind of come up with the language that goes in it.
But if Frank is our guy, he could also advise us on moving some of that money into these accounts that have higher earnings,
You can recommend
performance.
somebody within the bank.
Or, yeah,
He,
get us
he
after.
can do that. The directive I would prefer out of this meeting today is basically tell me what you don't want us to look at. Like if you don't want us to look at T-bills and look at all the other options with respect to
Just move it
CDs
from
and money
checking
markets
to
and
savings.
savings.
Correct,
Mhm.
that's what.
If you want us
We
to,
don't have to make it complicated.
Right.
Yeah, so,
And
so.
we could do that with a phone call.
So I would think that, interest rates are they've dropped a little bit, they're gonna come back. I don't see interest rates changing. This is a great opportunity for this organization and anybody else that is risk averse or needs to protect assets, to be earning that money, whether it's T-bills, but, I think if the diversification, if that's important, then that's something totally different. I don't see the rates being much different amongst institutions when you're talking about conservative investments like T-bills and CDs. They're all gonna be comparable.
Right. Yeah, but you get hooked up with a consultant could be managing billions, and we're just a little pocket inside of that. And they take on all the liability and responsibility as custodians.
I think the board
That's a
would
big
still have
difference, big difference.
obligations.
We haven't had, we're not gonna be violating policy, we're not at the 15 million, we're documented that we're talking about this, we have time. We don't need to knee-jerk. Before we move anything, I wanna take this off of my plate as being the custodian. That is the end game for me, and it should be for us as board members. I don't think we need to do anything right now, then start moving. If anything, instead of moving money inside the M&T house, I would even be more comfortable to get another ESL or another bank that's a large bank in town to be more diversified. There's a lot of moving parts going on here right
Yeah.
now, and there's a lot of money. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's taxpayer money. And our goal is to not lose money. We need to talk to the professionals. This is way above me as overseeing 160 million with my entity. I know the rights and the wrongs and the do's and the don'ts and the ins and the outs. This has me concerned
Okay.
to learn that this amount of money in a checking account. And that's where we should have a trigger that at 5 million, this should have come out of the checking and gone into the savings. And we should have that in policy, that should have been done. And now, to your point, yes, there's interest out there. I don't think that policy change hurts us in that sense, to put a trigger. We have the maximum and we'll have a maximum,
once
now
we
we
hit
just
an
need
amount.
when do we engage? Do we
Right.
need to engage before it hits 15, or do we be proactive at 5, 10, or whatever in the policy to give you the authority to move money and for us to see, because that number there is very concerning, and I know it happened rapidly, but if we had that in policy, this could have already been moved.
Those are astute and actionable suggestions, and the whole point of pulling together this committee meeting today was to have this discussion.
Yeah.
And no knee-jerk changes were being proposed or put on the table for action.
Yeah.
And those types of policy changes, like you point out, provide us greater protection. We're not looking at making our policy more flexible or our investments more risky or anything like that.
Just-
One little nitpicky comment, the funds that we hold as the IDA are paid to us by project applicants. So there can be some sensitivity in the community and some recent news articles that suggest that the money that IDAs hold, not just us, is
Taxpayer.
payments in lieu of taxes or taxpayer dollars. It's not. It is funds paid to the IDA by the project applicants as project fees. It's our the word I'm looking for, fee, as our fee revenue. So just a point that, while small, could make a big difference.
They're not taxpayer dollars, they're Amazon's dollars.
It is
my
a
people's
taxpayer,
dollars.
someone in the
Yes,
world
yes.
does pay taxes, who paid us those fees, but.
Deep-pocketed developers, you know, people that are coming to the IDA seeking a very powerful incentive, and the fees are based on the scale and size of the project.
How difficult would it be to put like a pie graph together in an annual basis of the fee revenues, of
Great
the
idea.
projects that
Great
are,
Sure.
that we could simply take a glance at, understand when it came in?
This investment person that we would perhaps bring on to advise us.
Yeah, that's
He
what a
could put
consultant would do.
that into form of a monthly report, I mean,
Right.
whatever we
Okay.
decide
So-
would be helpful to us.
So taking the information off the dashboard and
And
putting
just
it
graph it?
into a visual?
Yeah.
Okay.
A visual of revenue by type of project?
Or by,
Or
By
by
type
project.
of investment.
So like the percentage of the total revenue of how much each project.
Yeah, like what do we got, what's happening? Give us a sense of moving parts. We don't see the
I was
parts
thinking
you
more about
see
the
move
type of
every day. We
investment.
don't see that. And it'd be something that we could look at and go, holy cow, you know, okay, well, another conversation.
So specific
But we're talking
breakout.
two different things
I
here,
know,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Uh,
are, yeah.
Troy's talking about types of fee revenue in terms of by applicant
By project.
and also by type of project, right? Like by sales tax, right? Is that what?
Oh, so yeah, so you're breaking down even to all
To
the.
like benefit.
Well,
Well,
there's
'cause
different
there's
fee
multiple
structures
Right,
sides.
and I think
based
Ann
on
was
the
more on the investment side.
transaction.
Now,
Yeah, okay.
Troy, just so you know, on that, I have that. For whatever reason, I can't log in, but I have every single project by applicant, the dollar, and every time a dollar comes in, it gets allocated to the type of fee. So I could go back to the office and send that to you today.
So maybe not a pie, it's more of a silo of the, what is there, five or six different,
This is crazy.
different incentive silos.
So there's
you got-
4 different incentives and 3 different fee
So
schedules.
7.
4.
Sales tax only.
With some minimums, yeah, sales tax only, which is the lowest fee. If you're doing just sales and mortgage tax, that's the same fee, 0.5%. If you're getting a pilot, so our full suite of benefits, basically, it's 0.75%. If it's bond financing, it's, with a pilot, it's 1.25% of the total project cost.
Troy, you
So
can't
there's
really see it, but
multiple.
you could see that we have it done.
Okay.
Like, this is last year, and as you can see, the big green, I know you guys can't see it,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, I
and
can
there's-
see.
is application fees, because that's where all our money comes
All
from.
our revenue.
These other little slivers are sales tax packages and agency fee, and then the application
Yeah,
fees,
the-
the small
okay,
fee.
you've
So,
heard
so the pie graph will look like
like that,
this,
so it's-
where 98%
All of our fees come from.
is from the agency fee.
Yeah.
So the application.
But
So-
you could also have a pie chart on your investments and your investment vehicle, like
Right,
X
once we
amount
have
of
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
T-bills, X
Right now.
amount
Yeah.
of checking, I mean,
Yeah.
that's easy to do.
Yeah.
So,
So, okay, to clarify, the action items for staff is to create,
stop spending.
Stop spending
Trips
money.
to Florida. That's right.
do nothing, leave, everything's gonna stay where it is right now in these 4 accounts. And staff will work to get an RFP drafted and out into the public,
Mhm.
and then we will schedule a committee meeting when those come in to review and make a decision and go from there.
And look at revised language to put into the policy to trigger a transfer from checking to savings once we hit a certain amount in our checking. So we'll add another sentence to paragraph 7. So we'll look at that and the RFPs together.
And that number is $5 million, right?
Well,
That,
The
Well,
trigger?
the trigger, that's
I
what
think we
Troy
wait
had
for
said.
the-
I just don't, I know that you guys have to have liquid to move around and, you know, I don't know the number.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we have.
We need a number.
You have the max 15
The cap.
million where we have to do something, but
Yeah.
where can we trigger to start consideration?
Right.
obviously now I'm learning there's limitations on what you can invest, and obviously it's the same, I deal with that. I can't invest where I'm gonna lose money.
Right, exactly.
So I
Yeah.
know that there's
I get you.
options to that, but there could be different entities to help us. Would it be fair to say that anything in a consultant fee range would be under 20 basis points? Because you take 20 basis points for 15 million, you know, the fees, I want to make sure, because now that would be where the board would do their due diligence is how much are we paying for these fees, and who's monitoring
Right.
that, and
Yeah.
what is our,
I mean,
you know.
typically in the RFPs, we have the vendors submit their fee schedule,
Yeah.
so
Right.
we'll have that information, and you bring up a good point. I don't think we're the type of organization that should be paying consultants based on how much money we're investing. We're
Right.
not that type of organization.
Right,
That would
right.
be appropriate
And
for.
that might eliminate some of your people to
Right.
give you an RFP.
In the interim, before we have the RFP issued and people respond, can't we go to our current provider, M&T, and say, can we move some of this into higher earning interest? I mean, they might, that's what we're paying them to do, right?
And do we want it to be local? Do we want it to be an institution
They're our
that's
banker
local?
of the moment,
That's
why
probably
wouldn't we
important
ask them
You-
those
yeah.
questions?
Versus an ad.
Right.
You know,
I
more-
agree, but.
They
you know,
would
this
come
is-
back and say, yeah, I think you ought to, because of interest rates, and, you know, I think we ought to move monies from saving to
We
checking.
can start with a discussion with Frank Husta as
Abs-
our relationship manager, and
Absolutely.
then report back to
Right.
the committee
Right.
on that discussion and what direction he sends us in.
I would generally tend to agree with that. I mean, not anything outside our normal course of business. Keep
Right.
the funds in, and again, we're not gonna go to, we're gonna RFP the investment process, fine. But something, again, I don't wanna be here 3 or 4 months from now,
Doing it again.
not doing anything. So like, Troy, I mean,
gives
Troy,
us
could we
something to do right
agree,
now.
I think, that we would say, could we do something with M&T to just get it out of our checking? Either whether it's a CD
They
or
would
money
recommend
market?
that
I mean, are we
easily.
okay with doing that within M&T today?
Yeah. Okay.
That's really what I'm looking for, like,
And we can get the information, if this committee's gonna meet again in March, because all committees are meeting in March, and
Mhm.
come back and say, this is what.
We did,
is-
right.
We could either do it or wait until that committee meeting to tell you for you to bless it.
If they say move 5 million into savings out of checking, does that require committee approval?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
That would, should
If we
be
call Frank
on
and they
this
say,
call, I
yeah, you
think.
should move $5
Yeah.
million into your savings account, does that need committee approval, or can
I
Anna
wouldn't
just
think
do
so.
that?
I don't think
I think
so.
that's
No.
Anna,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Or a
It's-
money-
we're
or a
not-
money
it-
market.
And it doesn't freeze the
I don't-
asset.
No,
We'll let you know what
Okay.
we'll do, but we don't need approval. I mean, that's,
no.
seems to me just a
Would you
logical
need
thing.
approval
Day-to-day
to run into a
management
money
of
market?
the income.
No.
But we would, when
That's
we
what
do
it-
that, I think
because
Lisa
they're
would have to
paying way more than savings.
participate, right?
Yeah.
Or can we just-
all right, how about,
Yeah, it'd be, because it's two.
We would need a signature.
how about I communicate and talk with Frank about what our options are to.
Who we should work with
What-
at the.
Well,
bank.
again, in terms of, this is what we have, fill him in on, we're going to RFP a potential longer-term solution, 3 to 4 to 5 months to someone help us in the long term to take our excess, but in the short term,
Who
tell us
at
what our
the bank
options
should
are to
advise
take
us,
money out
yeah.
of our checking
Right.
account. We will, communicate that, facilitate that to the committee, and you guys are the decision makers on that, and you guys decide on how you wanna, what and how you wanna do that. Without making a decision here today, saying, hey, we're gonna do 2 million over here. Let's, you guys will get the information.
So, quick question. Why do we have savings 1 at 1.25 million and savings 2?
So
Why-
that number's 743,000.
Right,
comma
so
top.
why do we have 2 savings accountants and a checking account right now?
Been like that
Yes, is my
since
question.
before time.
So it's
No
been
idea.
like that for many, many years. It doesn't need to remain that way.
Right.
We can adjust
So it's time,
according to.
basically, I think it's time to tear the Band-Aid off.
Okay.
And let's start looking at serious dollars
Mm-hmm.
and our options, because, right,
Okay. I
Again,
I got-
no
you got my
major
gears spinning with
changes
this,
were
right?
I
being
got it.
You know?
proposed today. We wanted to have a conversation with the committee, have a productive discussion about the historic year that we had, the revenues, the fee income that we're sitting on, and make good, sound financial decisions as a result of the very healthy financial situation that we're finding ourselves in, in the current interest rate environment.
Well, we can meet prior once we get that information, right? Can we share this, in the email and
Yeah.
everybody give a quick,
Yeah.
I think,
Comment?
I'm
Yeah.
okay with
Yeah, a
that.
comment.
Yeah, not a, but we'll share.
What? I didn't say that. Thank you. Thank you for being open-minded about.
Of course, yeah.
all
Jay,
of
you have
this.
a comment or a
Yeah, I
question?
know I came in late, but, the county, probably has a bunch of money, and does their finance department do something when they park their excess cash that?
That's a question for Bob Franklin, our chief financial officer in the county. I couldn't tell you.
That's a good thought.
I should look into
That's a
that.
good-
That's a, yeah, similar to many of our other policies mirror those that govern the county, so I think that's something we can look into.
Motion to adjourn?
We've got another meeting to get
Betsy's
to
turn,
here.
though. Good job.
We haven't addressed the rest of the,
Looking at the clock.
Lots of good ideas. I appreciate the dialogue and the discussion on the interest of everyone. And so we'll stay tuned until we get an update from Greg and Anna, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion? And a
second, I'm sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
And
Committee
Ann
is
and Anna,
adjourning.
I'm